The power of walking alone and the purpose behind the isolation phase. You're going to become a very strong and wise person coming out of the isolation phase, because not many people can really survive being alone. Their idle mind will drive them into insanity, especially when you go through the harassment, or if you have all these intrusive thoughts and unhealed traumas that really start to beat you down over time. Struggling with these things on top of, the spiritual warfare and psychological warfare as well, because there are many different tools that certain individuals will use when they want to keep their eyes on you from a distance. And they will try to mess with your head in any way that they can. And if you're the kind of person that is able to survive all those attacks, unseen attacks at that, this isn't something you could just prove. That's why you can't really report it. You can't really tell people about it, because then they're gonna think you're crazy. We know this. We're very aware of that. So when you are the kind of person that is able to walk alone, or even walking away from certain situations that became very painful, situations where you had a lot of love for certain individuals in your life, and maybe you had to walk away from the abuse, whoever it is or wherever it is. It could be anything. We're talking people, places, workplaces, systems, anything like that. Most of this society, is pretty much designed to break you down. Especially when you're a person that is high vibrational. You're noticing that everywhere you turn, there's constant attacks, and you have no one to talk to about it because they don't see what you see. You ever wonder why not many people can see what you see? It's because it's almost like, I like to compare this to kind of like a dog whistle. Dog whistles, only dogs can hear it, and it's a certain frequency. Humans can't hear it because they don't have that. They're not tuned into that. I don't know exactly what it may be. I don't know if it's because of I know it's the hearing, but it might be something in the dog's brain that is able to capture very faint tones, very faint noises. Humans, their hearing is not as good as that of a dog. I compare it to that because it's very similar to a person that has higher spiritual sensitivity. You can really sense things that others can't. And so that's why people will label you with a certain label, to try to, I guess, minimize or downplay what is really happening on a spiritual level, basically. And because a lot of people really don't believe in the spiritual realm, they're just not going to understand. So you might as well you might as well not even bother with that. But people who are sensitive to the spirit realm, they can sense a lot of things, man, that other people don't pick up on. People who are more spiritually sensitive, they can pick up on certain things that others can't. And once you come to the realization that you're somebody that has these spiritual gifts, you're pretty much on your own. And that is where that's where the isolation phase starts. And usually it's almost like we're not necessarily choosing the isolation phase. It's almost like it chooses us, because normally the way that it happens is that we're placed in certain situations or places in life where we're forced to make a choice. Okay, are we gonna choose the light or the darkness? Good versus evil. And depending on what decision you make, that's going to determine your walk. Now, we're speaking in terms of those who choose the divine light, the narrow path, you know. And so once you go down that path, you know, you're going to be met with a lot of trials and tribulations, you know. But just like a lot of people say, you either suffer for good or you suffer for evil. You know, some people have believed in the lies of Diablo when when they decide to suffer for evil, I mean, they're going to be destroyed by their own evil. That's why choosing the path of darkness is very foolish, you know, because you may not come back from it. Some people come back, but some people don't, man. And that's why it's so risky. It's not something to be played with, you know. And a lot of times people choose the path of darkness because they didn't know any better. You know, to them, that was the best decision at that time, because they were operating off of a carnal mind, so they didn't know any better. And that's why we pray for people that, you know, they make the wrong decision, but hopefully they can come out of that deception, you know, and learn from it. And that could become a testimony as well, and it could help other people, preventing them from going down that road and stuff like that. But that's a whole nother thing. But I want to say this, you know, a lot of us, we did not choose a lot of the situations that we have been through, you know, traumatic experiences. Obviously, that's not something that we chose. So that's how you know that, you know, from the very beginning, you were selected. You were selected to experience life the way you did. And having to awaken these gifts that we have, you know. Now, when you think about it like this, right? If it wasn't for all of those traumas, you would not have chosen to walk alone, because you have to think about it. What made you walk alone? What made you want to get away from certain situations? Usually it's because you've had enough. You've had enough of people's bullshit. And that right there, you eventually you get to a point where you realize, it's almost like you come to this realization, and it's very powerful, and it leads to a whole nother path, or at least it takes you to another level in life, because now you're realizing, you're waking up, you're seeing things for what it is. And every time you face a certain situation, you learn from it. And one of the biggest things you learn is the fact that you learn the power of walking away. You learn about the value that you carry, and you start to, and also you realize your self-love, because you have to love yourself enough to get away from certain places where you're not being honored, you know. And that's the beauty behind rejection, is that it pushes us in certain directions. You know, when you get to that level, to that point, I mean, it's hard for a person to hurt you now. And that is the meaning of being on a high vibration, is that it's hard for people to hurt you, because you know what these things mean. You don't take it personal. And sometimes, hey, I had to work on that myself, you know, because one of the hardest things to heal from is betrayal and heartbreak, being one of them. And that can come in many forms, you know. But when you detach from the world, nothing really surprises you, especially when you realize that, you know, this world is no different than a simulation. The purpose behind the isolation is the fact that, again, you did not necessarily choose that. You were put in a position where you had no other choice, and some people self-destruct in that moment. And usually that's what happens when you decide to walk away from the smear campaign. When you decide that you want to leave certain situations and systems that are causing you to be unalived slowly. Because when you really think about it, everything about this so-called matrix is really designed to make you wither away very, very slowly, from the food, from even the so-called medications. You know, there's so many disturbing things about the food, man. Like, I saw a video, I don't know where I saw it, I think it was a short, of a lady cutting open a chicken, and apparently the chicken had cancer in it. You know, it looked very disgusting, and it's like, wow. You know, so it's like, You mean so? And it's not a surprise for a lot of us that are aware that a lot of these so-called foods, you know, you don't know what the hell is in it. You know, even especially when you buy meat that's already cut, you don't know what it was. What you don't know if there was cancer growing right next to that meat that they cut. You know, so that's another thing to think about, and that's another way that what you consume also has it influences your temple, right? You have to be mindful of that, you know, not just the energy behind how it's prepared, but the energy of the animal itself. And because of animals, of course, when you're looking at mass manufacturing of food, I mean, that's why people choose to be vegan and vegetarian, you know, because of that. But now you have to worry about produce and soy consumption, which soy isn't always the best thing either. So it's like, what the hell do you eat? Well, in reality, the best way to eat is to grow your own food. But, you know, some of us don't have the means of doing that yet, you know. And to be honest, unless you leave the country, you live in a different country where people actually have real food, because that does exist. You know, it's just something about the divided states that they don't believe in real food. I mean, they everything about the divided state society is just full of poison everywhere. Every time you turn on the TV, you have a commercial coming on, and what do you see? Medications, weight loss. It's usually weight loss shots all day, and antidepressants and Viagra. Those are the main medications that you'll see on the TV. And then they tell you all these side effects that come with that, when there's natural ways to alleviate these things, especially the depression thing. Because all depression really is, just like a lot of mental health issues, is it's an imbalance of chemicals in the brain, right? Now, why is it that in the divided states there's such a mental health crisis? Why is that? People are losing their minds over here. And most people will say that the divided states is the greatest country in the world. Really, if that's the case, why are people so miserable? Why are people so highly narcissistic, highly ungrateful, high sense of entitlement, disgusting attitudes, you know? And also high levels of depression. And the people are not satisfied, especially right now. But even before 2025, like, you know, say maybe around for the past 10 years, you know, people, yeah, the depression and the mental health crisis it went up. You know, why is that? We already know this is tied into the systems of control and how they make money off of suffering. Everything about this society is built off of the suffering of others, and that is how they take. Not only do they benefit financially, but even energetically and, you know, demonically, because that's a demonic thing, and that's how it's always been. That's the divided states for you. The divided states is all about that. And so I at this point, with everything that I am aware of, with everything that I know, it's like this is why I find it hard for me to want to participate in this so-called broken society, right? Because this is a divided states thing, you know. And the more you learn, it's like, for some of us, we've known this for a while now, you know, but we've kind of felt forced to, okay, we have to try to live a normal life. But every time you do that, you're reminded as to why you just don't want to participate in this society, because everything about it, no matter where you go, it's going to be connected to that in some way. Like, again, like the so-called medical field, right? You're not really helping people. That's one of the saddest things, man. Because some of us really want to help people. But if you find something that actually cures something, if you come up with a natural way of alleviating a certain condition, what, they're going to throw you in jail. Of course, because you're getting in the way of their ability to make money off of the suffering of others. Everything about this so-called divided states is just making money off of other people's suffering. That includes all the wars, all of that stuff, everything. you know? It's hard not to see it at this point. And we can go on and on. I mean, there's so many different things that they do. The level of wickedness is so high that it's just crazy. And that is why, like I said, it's all because of money, you know? But once you realize that money is an illusion, money provided a false sense of superiority and control and power to those who some of which don't even deserve that level of power because they don't have the responsibility to handle it. You know, there's a lot of corrupt hands that have a lot of wealth, so-called wealth. You know? That's why I'm very detached from that, man. I'm very detached from that. I don't care about money as long as I have what I need to live. I am very thankful and grateful for my daily bread. I'm thankful and grateful for the fact that I have, you know, I was blessed with a brilliant mind, brilliant and creative, spiritual gifts, and my connection to the Most High God and the experiences that I've had that have shown me that the Most High is real and that, you know, he really, really embraces my existence. And now feeling so alive spiritually, to be spiritually alive is a very beautiful feeling, you know, to be authentically myself and not feeling like I have to, you know, allow parts of myself to be broken down just to satisfy so-called society, a corrupt society that is wicked to its core. What is the point of serving a place like this? A place that will never truly honor you. It's not designed to, you know. So, isolation. When you come out of the isolation phase, I mean, you're going to get to a point, you know that you've graduated from the isolation phase when you find yourself perfectly content with your solitude. Yes, you get to a point where it doesn't feel like torture. If anything, you go from calling it isolation to solitude, you know, because you find yourself at peace. Now you've mastered how to have a peace of mind. You've mastered conquering all negative thoughts. You destroy every single negative, intrusive thought that comes your way, and you transform it into something empowering. And that is how you rewrite your future and everything that comes from you. You know, you create everything. You are the one that creates anything that you want, really. It's all in your mind. You know, that's why they always want to bombard us with distractions and all, you know, all the stuff in the news that you don't even know if some of this stuff is true or not, you know, or you don't know what kind of narrative they're trying to spin, because they could take a little bit of truth and make it look like something completely different than what it actually is. And that's what happens when people push their little political narratives and all this stuff. At this point, the politics is a circus, really, you know. It's always been like that, you know. So everything, pretty much everything's rigged. I mean, so at this point, there's no sense of being attached to the world. You know, the world is just going to play with your emotions like a covert narcissist. You know, so-called the divided states media is going to continue to play on your emotions to try to piss you off, to try to rile you up, make you hate certain people that have nothing to do with whatever you've got going on in your personal life. You know, trying to make you go against somebody. Well, the more you watch this so-called media, you just feel like, why do I feel like this? They're trying to turn me into a chess piece. You know, wanting me to accept something, a certain belief that it does not align with my values, you know, like I don't want to hate a person just because of what? Really, because of what? What outer appearance? Because of the flesh? But I'm not falling for it. I'm not falling for it. I sometimes you have to kind of shut the news off. And I know sometimes it it pops up on YouTube when you look at your feed and stuff, and you kind of want to know what's going on. But don't get so sucked in. Don't get so sucked into it. It's good to know what's going on, but you got to balance it. You got to keep in mind that we don't know what kind of narratives they want to spin. But normally you can tell when you look at the title of some of these videos, you can tell that it's intended to bring a reaction out of a person and making people hate others, man. People that you don't even know, man. You know how many people are in this so-called divided states and all over the Western hemisphere? You know, there's so many, there's like billions of people. You mean to tell me that you think that one group of people thinks the same or that they act the same? Of course not. Of course not. But they will make you believe that, you know, and stuff like that. So this is why, like, for myself, right? For some of us, if you have been I've been a loner for most of my life, you know. I am content with my solitude, and I know when I went through my isolation phase, you know, it really was not that bad because I was already accustomed to that, you know. Even growing up, it's like I was the only child until I turned 10. So I was already used to just me, you know. I was already accustomed to that. So I've always been that way. So when the isolation phase came into my life in my adult years, that was like when I really did a lot of healing and so many different things, and I was just very low key. Like I wasn't even on social media. I remember that I literally spent like 3 years not even touching social media. So that was that, because I really needed to get myself really focusing, and I was spending a lot of time in nature, kind of like living like a monk in a way. Because I just really wanted to get away from the noise. You know, you notice that there's a lot of pollution. And it's not just the environment. There's a lot of spiritual pollution. You know, because of all of the noise that you hear from people's energy, man. People's energy is just like, it starts to interfere with you, right? So that's what I did, and it helped me a lot. And this was like something that I didn't have to force it on myself. It just naturally came to me. So by the time that I came out of that, around 2021, that's when I decided to start my little writing blog and stuff, and slowly but surely start building that up until now I started YouTube, you know, recently. So it's a process of getting yourself ready to express yourself, you know, and to share your light. But isolation, that's how you know that when you come out of it, you realize how strong you are, you know, and the wisdom really starts to pour into you, you know, because we need that. And again, this is a blessing. The more you awaken, the more you realize that a lot of people, they don't have this, man. You know, when you come out of that, like at the point that I'm at right now, 2025 right now, you know, I have already been through the phases of awakening, you know, the different phases, including the isolation. And like I said, that didn't really bother me like that, because solitude is something that I value. I actually prefer to be in solitude in most times, you know. But now this is the time to express. And what I've come to find out is that a lot of people, like, they can't handle being alone, man. There's so many people, they cannot sit down with their own thoughts. Okay, so keep this in mind. Whenever a so-called narcissist or a manipulative person tries to make you believe that you're a bad person, when they try to make you think that this, that, and the other, when they try to make you believe in their lies, and they want to suck you into their false illusion, right? Whenever you encounter those people, you know, keep in mind that if you're able to sit down with your own thoughts and have perfect clarity and actually have the ability to see the truth for what it really is, the fact that you could sit down and have a peace of mind, you know, that in of itself shows that you're not the problem, and you've already healed from the things you needed to heal from, and you're not allowing these thoughts to, you know, but you're not allowing yourself to be bombarded by negative thoughts that may come your way. You have mastered that. So, well, at least for the most part, you know, but See, when people they try to play that reverse psychology on you. And I know because I actually encountered this. You're going to notice that right after your isolation phase, the enemy is going to try to send someone from the past to try to throw a curveball at you. They're going to try to play that reverse psychology and make it seem like, that you're the bad person, and that's the reason why they didn't want to talk to you. They didn't want to talk to you, and that's why you haven't talked to them in years. That's why you haven't heard from them in years, because you're such an awful person. They'll play that reverse psychology, but this is how I flipped it. You know how I did it? Because also, if I'm such a toxic person, why did you keep looking for me all this time? Crickets. Because it makes no sense for them to constantly look for you. And it's just like, it was so uncalled for, but you're going to realize that you're going to encounter something like this right after your isolation phase. And I know because I've experienced this, and this could be anyone. It could be anybody from the past that wants to they still want to, you mean to tell me after all these years, they still want to make you believe that you're the bad person, that you're the problem. You're like, think about how crazy that looks. This person is trying to make you believe that you're toxic, that you're the problem. Okay, well, why are you still looking for me after all these years? That sounds nutty. That sounds crazy, especially when you've put yourself in a certain distance, right? And you just kind of go your own separate ways. But these individuals will try to find you, and that's what makes it crazy, is that they try to find you. They go out of their way to find everything, and then that's how you know that these type of people, they miss our energy. That's really what it boils down to, and they hate the fact that they fucked up. That's what I get out of it, And like I said, we are not harboring hatred for them. We just decided to walk away so that we maintain our own sovereignty, our own sense of peace. And we just want to move on with our lives, because a lot of us, we've been through a lot already from our early years, all types of traumas. And that's the crazy thing, is that some of these people have been so close to us once upon a time that they already knew this. They already knew about the traumas and all these different things, and they still have the nerves to try to play with our heads. Like, come on. Once that happens, once a person decides to play that reverse psychology stuff on me, I mean, you're never going to hear from me again, because I don't appreciate a person playing with my head like that, trying to make me believe that I'm this and I'm that, when knowing damn well all the things I've done for them. You ever look back and you think about how much of a great friend you've been to someone, how much of a great, friend or partner or whoever, how great you've been to them. You're not perfect, but you know the kind of person you are, and you remember some of the compliments that they gave you. Yes, they have told you to your face. They've said positive things about you once upon a time, but once you decided to walk away, and when you realize that this person never felt that way, or whatever the fuck came upon them, because it just so happens that in our experience we face a lot of betrayal, but the betrayal, like I said, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it at all. I actually appreciate it, because now that lets me know that, okay, now it's the time to it's time for me to stop investing my energy into this person, place, or system. And it's time for me to move on with my life. It's time for me to walk away. And that's why I said there's a lot of power in walking away from certain situations and places, because that right there it's like it's directing you to where you actually need to be. Even if you don't know exactly where you're going, you know that this ain't it. This is not it. So we're going to go the other way, the way where, we're being divinely guided. Right? And that's what matters. As long as you keep that connection with the Most High, you have nothing to worry about, And I'm gonna tell you this right now, like, another thing too, the purpose behind the isolation phase is that how powerful of a mind and spirit you have to be able to sit down with yourself, you alone, and have peace and tranquility with your own thoughts, despite the fact that you have complex PTSD, you know, all these from because of all these traumas, right? Past traumas, past wounds, memories, all these things pop in your mind, but you've mastered how to be at peace with yourself and with your mind, because you know and you realize that all of this stuff, for the most part, you were able to unpack every aspect of yourself. And that's the beauty of shadow work. And again, shadow work is very intense. Healing work it's a very it could be kind of scary, but the more you face it, you take your baby steps, take it in increments, small doses over time, you will be healed, at least enough to be able to continue with your life and be able to sit down and be at peace with yourself. And that is the greatest blessing right there. People keep saying, praying to God to give them this and give them that. But one of the greatest blessings to receive is to have a peace of mind, to be able to go to sleep at night, to be able to wake up and feel amazing. People take that for granted. They don't think that's a blessing. To them, a blessing is just, oh, I want some money. I want money, 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 money. Everything's all about money, material, right? And that is why I appreciate my the traumas and the battles that I faced, because it put me in a position where, yeah, I was at a negative net. I was at a negative, right? Once upon a time, Once I started to build myself up, once I started to, get to that point, it made me very thankful for these things, that so when the blessings do come, you can actually see it. You can actually acknowledge the blessings, right? Which is what I just named earlier. The spiritual gifts, the sense of peace, being able to have wisdom poured into your mind, and then you speak it. It flows right out the mouth, it flows right out of your mouth. And it just sounds so lovely, the way you describe things, the way you express yourself. And then you have your passion is with you now, because you were able to transform that anger and sorrow and sense of hopelessness. You turned it into a passionate fuel, and it can be felt through your voice when you speak on it, when you express yourself. Most people don't have that. They don't have passion. People that live privileged lives, you think they have passion? You think they have a story? Of course not. Right? But some people are so busy envying those that have more materially, not realizing that if you had the spiritual eye, you'll realize that those who have all this so-called material wealth are very much spiritually impoverished. And we're the ones with all the spiritual wealth. And how? Because I'm able to be happy. Now imagine being broke as hell and still being able to be happy and have a creative and brilliant mind, being magnetic, even though I don't have to have the nicest things to attract people into my life. Imagine that. Imagine you don't have shit, but people are so drawn to you. They want to listen to you now, because now is your time. They didn't always want to listen to you once upon a time, but now they do, right? Right? Imagine having that, and it's like, you don't have the money yet, right? But imagine if you did, right? Imagine if you did have that money, that financial status or whatever. You would be very happy. You would actually be very grateful, more grateful, and you'll be able to live with yourself, because you know that you acquired that through the Most High, through divine timing, and actually having patience, because sometimes people, they don't have patience, they want it now, but that's what leads you to a hellhole, is when you want things quickly, when you are looking for it, when you have that instant gratification. Another thing too, if it wasn't for having to go without, I would not feel this happy when I finally start to have things coming to me, when I finally start to have, like, it's easy for you to see that you're blessed when you have gone without, when things have been taken from you. When you're born into a world where you're empty handed, basically, you don't have much, it's very easy for you to see the blessings. And when you give gratitude for those blessings, the Most High can hear you very clearly. And that's what allows you to be more blessed. And as time goes by, it just gets better because you can actually see the blessing. See, people that are, carnal minded, they're of the world, they only think in terms of materialism. They don't know they don't know how blessed they are at all, because everything has to be about money with them. Everything has to be about what's tangible, which it explains why they're not grateful for the great people that they're around. They're not thankful to their partner or their whoever's in their life that's actually making their life better in some way. They're not really grateful for wisdom. Oh no, they don't care about that. No, they don't like that. They don't care about knowledge because they never had to really cultivate that in order to survive or to overcome certain situations. So a lot of the situations that we've been in, it literally placed us. It basically forced us to come up with solutions that other people would never have because they never had to think about it. And that made us great. It shaped us. And now, as everything is going crazy right now for some people, we have the ability to be at peace even during times of chaos. Now you tell me that's not a blessing.